How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to bring you my gold weapon guide video. This will not only be a guide of how to do each base challenge for the gun and gold, but also platinum and poly, and this will include each weapon setup that I use for all of the challenges in the game for all of the ARs in the game currently. So this is all the ARs from the M4 to the new one, which is the M13B, and a lot of the stuff can still apply to future DLC guns. But before we get into the general stuff that I want to talk about before we get into individual weapons and their setups, check all the links in the description for this video. There's going to be videos for camo tracker spreadsheet that I made, a video for the fastest way to level up your guns, and there's a link to my Discord, which also has a link to all of the best setups that I currently use for every gun in the game. So if you're interested in all that stuff, make sure you click the link down below. And also there are timestamps for this video, so if you want to click around to each part of the video or any gun or any of the setups, you can go ahead and do that. But let's get into the video. So number one thing is the modes you want to play. I'd recommend shipment and shoot house whenever shipment comes in the game. And then if there's a hardcore, aka tier 1, I'm just going to call it hardcore for this video because that's what it is. Definitely play the hardcore version. Me personally, when I grind camos, no matter what, unless it's like snipers, I always play hardcore. Obviously I did ORION without hardcore, and this is definitely doable, but there are a lot of guns that are easier to do in hardcore, and especially if there's a shipment and shoot house playlist, it's a no-brainer. But if you prefer playing core, that's 100% fine. And if there's a gun that I would recommend only playing hardcore in, I will mention it when we get to certain guns in this video. But let's get into the general stuff of how to unlock the camos. You have 4 base challenges, which we will discuss on each specific gun because they're different across all weapons. And then once you have those 4 challenges done, you have to do gold, and for all the ARs, they will be 3 kills without dying 10 times. And then platinum, you have to get 8 of the guns gold, and there's currently 9 guns done, so you only have to do 8 of them. It doesn't matter which 8, you only have to do 8 of them. And once you have 8 of them gold, you will have to get 25 long shots. And then once you have 51 guns platinum in the game, you will unlock the polyatomic challenge for those 51 guns. And we will be talking about specific setups for each weapon that I use for each of these challenges later in the video. But now let's talk about the easiest way to get platinum. And this is going to be a part where I'm trying to future-proof this video because right now there's no hardcore shoot house playlist, but let's say there is, and you can do this for normal shoot house as well, but it's going to be a little bit easier in hardcore, which is why I recommend it. And I would just in general probably just switch to hardcore with a lot of the worst guns in the game, even if there's no hardcore shoot house playlist. But let's say there is, what I would do is camp on that middle wall and mount, and then let's say you're dying. For most of my setups, I just have a red dot on my gun when I'm doing long shots. But if you're dying a lot and getting killed instantly as you hop up on the wall, what you're going to do is switch to cold-blooded, put a thermal sight on your gun, and throw a smoke on yourself on the wall, and then hop up, and that's going to give you a little bit of an advantage. And the person trying to kill you literally will have no chance unless they're using thermal or if they just hit you randomly. So that's what I would do for platinum, assuming that there's a hardcore shoot house playlist. And then that's it for the Platnium Strat. But before we get into the setups and breaking down each weapon individually, I just want to say general info for attachments. You do not need to use these setups, especially for like my general setup. The general setup that I will provide is, in my opinion, the best setup for each gun in the game. But if you're just playing hardcore and you slap a red dot on your gun, you will be fine. I would just mainly look at these setups as like a blueprint and try to make your setups as close to these as possible by selecting attachments that are similar to the ones I have selected. So I just wanted to say all this before we get into the weapon setups so some of you guys aren't confused going into the builds. So the first gun we're going to be starting with is the M4. Starting with the camo challenges, the 4 challenges you unlock and have to do in order from top to bottom are 50 kills, 50 ADS, 10 double kills, and 15 behind. These shouldn't be too difficult. The behind kills, if you're struggling with those, just camp a little bit more. Wait for people to run past you. Run ghost, run dead silence. You shouldn't have that much problems with that. But let's move on to the gun builds that I came up with. And this first build right here is my build that I use normally. This is a great build. But moving on to the build that I used for platinum is the same build that I use, except that I took off the laser and put an optic on, and then I changed the muzzle to this suppressor. And this suppressor is very great, but if you're playing hardcore, you shouldn't have that much trouble with going for long shots. And then let's say you're going for polyatomic, this is the build that I would use right here. This build is the exact same as my first build, except that I took off the laser and put an optic on. Now for polyatomic and going for headshots, this is a personal preference thing. You can use the iron sights for guns, or you could use the optic. If you prefer the optic, use this setup. If you prefer iron sights, just use the first build that I mentioned for the M4. But that's all for the M4. Now we're going to move on to the M16. The 4 challenges for the M16 are 50 kills, 10 double kills, 30 crouch, and 20 mounted. Crouch kills are easy, you just have to crouch. It sucks that you have to be slowed down and crouch around the map like a goblin, but it happens. And then if you're struggling with the mount kills, use a deployable shield. These shouldn't be too hard, especially if you're playing shoot house and shipment. Like I said, put the deployable shield down and that gives you a little bit more freedom to mount wherever you want. And then let's get into the builds for the M16. It's actually only going to be one, and the reason for this is being when you use this gun, just play hardcore. This gun sucks.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Make your life a lot easier by playing hardcore. And the reason for only one gun build for hardcore would be this gun has excellent range and it has an optic, so it's easy to see people for headshots and long shots, and you're going to be one tapping people or one bursting people in hardcore anyway. And one thing that you could do in hardcore is instead of using the burst, you could just switch it to semi-auto and use it that way. Me personally, I would try it out, see whichever version works best for you in terms of burst or semi-auto. But overall, I did this gun in core and used this build and it was fine. Obviously it sucked because this gun is ass, but overall you shouldn't have that much problems with this gun in hardcore. But now we're going to move on to the TAC 56. The 4 challenges for the TAC 56 are 50 kills, 10 doubles, 10 ADS, and 15 hipfires. And looking at the gun build, this is what I would use normally. For the hipfires, I would change the laser to any of the hipfire lasers that help you with your hipfire, obviously. And then another thing that you can do with this is change the barrel, take it off, and put the underbarrel as the FSS shark fin. And basically what this build would be for is shipment shoot house. It just makes it so you aim in a lot faster, you have better handling, or you could just take off the barrel and put an optic on. But moving on to my long shot build for this, it's my normal build minus the rear grip, put an optic on so you can see a little bit better, and this should be a pretty good build for you guys to use. And this is a good build that I would use for the headshots as well if you wanted that extra range. But overall, you can take off the barrel and put the rear grip back on for headshots. But like I said, this gun is very good. You shouldn't have that many problems. But now we're going to move on to the Lachmann 556. And the 4 challenges are 50 kills, 10 double kills, 50 suppressor, and 10 hipfires. And in terms of gun builds, I only have one. And this is a build that you're going to like tinker around and mess with some stuff. Starting with the hipfires, you're going to change the laser to one that helps with hipfiring. And then the muzzle, you're going to change it to a suppressor. You can use that echo list suppressor on the Lachmann that I used for the M4. But overall, it shouldn't really matter what suppressor you use. You only need to use it for 50 kills anyway. But this is a build I would use for long shot, headshots, and just in general. If you do want an optic, you can take off the rear grip and put the optic on if you do not like the iron sights for this gun. But overall, this gun's a decent gun. I would probably still only use this in hardcore, but if you prefer core, this gun is definitely solid. It will still get beat out by a lot of the better ARs in the game, but you should have no problems doing the challenges for this gun. So now we're going to move on to the STB, which is the AUG. And the 4 challenges for the AUG are going to be 50 kills, 20 mounted, 10 double kills, and 30 crouch kills. The same thing with the M16. Use a deployable cover if you are struggling with the mounted kills so you have that freedom of mounting anywhere. And then the crouch kills, you're just going to have to crouch. But let's talk about my gun builds, and I do have 3 builds. This is my normal rushing build that you can kill people at range with this, mainly medium to short ranges. The AUG does have really bad range in this game. But speaking of ranges, let's talk about the build that I would use for long shots. And this is going to be swapping out the rear grip and the barrel, and then changing the laser to this high velocity ammo. And basically what this is going to do is increase your range and increase how fast your bullets hit your enemies. And if you're playing hardcore, you should have no problems with this gun. But let's talk about my headshot build. And this is basically my regular build minus the stock, and I put the optic on. If you're fine with doing headshots without an optic, definitely just use my first build that I mentioned here. So that's everything for the AUG, and now we're going to move on to the AKs. So for the Kastov 7.62, the 4 challenges are 50 kills, 20 mounted, 50 ADS, and 15 behind. Mounted kills, if you're having trouble with those, just use a deployable cover. And then for the behind kills, just camp a little bit more. People will pass you eventually, and this shouldn't be too difficult. But let's talk about the builds. And I've created 2 builds. Normally I would just use 1 build, but this build right here is the one I would use for shipment and shoot house. And I would also use this to get your headshots for polyatomic. And then this build right here is what I would use normally on bigger maps in the game and while going for long shots. And the main differences between these two builds is you still have good handling and recoil control with both of these, but the main difference is the barrel, and while having this increases your range, which is mainly used for longer distances. If you're playing shoot house and shipment and not shooting at those ranges, it's kind of pointless to have those barrels on. So this is the build for the 7.62, and this is one of the best guns in the game. It's one of the easiest guns to gold in the game, so you should have fun with this. But now we're going to move on to the Kastov 545, and the 4 challenges for that are going to be 50 kills, 10 hip fires, 50 ADS kills, and 50 suppressor. So let's look at my builds, and I'm going to have 2 builds, and this first build is for shipment and shoot house or just generally smaller maps. Now for most 6v6 encounters, this build is going to be generally better for all maps in the game, but if you are doing the suppressor kills, change the muzzle to a suppressor, and then for your hip fire kills, you're going to change the laser to a laser that helps with hip fire. And then this build is also what I would use for polyatomic for the headshots, but let's move on to the build I would use for platinum while going for long shots. And it's the same thing with the 7.62. You take out the muzzle and you add this barrel. This barrel is going to increase your range while keeping some recoil control. So overall, this gun is worse than the 7.62 AK, but it's still pretty solid, and you should have easy time getting gold on this gun as well. But now we're going to move on to the 74U, and this gun's very interesting. So starting with the challenges, we have 50 kills, 15 point blanks, 10 double kills, and 30 crouch kills. All those are pretty easy except the point blanks. Now for point blanks on shipment, those are not going to be difficult at all, but if you're not playing on shipment, it's going to be kind of annoying. Basically what I try to do is either sneak up on people or just jump at people. Just try to get super close to people and just hope that you can kill them and it counts as a point blank. But in terms of builds, this is my main build that I use. This is the build that I enjoy using. Basically with the 74U, this gun is going to be treated as an SMG, and that's why I have it built like this. Is it's got decent accuracy and really great handling. And then for headshots, what we're going to do is take off the underbarrel and put on an optic. If you want to use iron sights, definitely go for that. And then for long shots, this is where the build changes a little bit, and that's where I have an optic and I take off the laser and put the high velocity ammo on. If you're playing hardcore, this should not matter, but when I was using this in core for my long shots, putting the high velocity ammo on changed this gun a lot for me. So this is definitely what I would use. Treat it as like an SMG. It's not going to be that good at long range, but at close range, this is by far the best gun in the game. Now we're going to be talking about the M13B, which is the brand new AR that you get from playing DMZ. And the 4 challenges are going to be 50 kills, 10 doubles, 15 point blanks, and 15 behind. So the point blank kills were kind of annoying for me. Same with the behind kills for the M13, but for the behind kills, all you have to do is just camp a little bit more. And then for the point blanks, you're just gonna have to jump at people and hope that they are point blanks, or just sneak up behind someone and shoot them in the back very close to them. But if you're playing shipment, that should not matter. But let's get into the builds. And this is the build that I use normally. This build has great handling and great recoil control. This gun is definitely a lackluster AR. You will have to hit a lot of headshots in core to be competitive with other ARs in the game. But overall, in my opinion, this is the best setup for this gun. But now let's talk about my build that I used for polyatomic and platinum when I got them. And basically what we did was took off the underbarrel and put on the optic. If you like the optic on this gun and don't care for the underbarrel or don't like the iron sights, this build is definitely good to use no matter what. And this is the build that I used for most of my time when using this gun. And that's everything for the M13B. And we've reached the end of the video. That's all my tips and tricks and setups for all the ARs currently in Modern Warfare 2. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like and subscribe and share this video to your friends to show them these god tier setups. Anyways guys, I appreciate all the support on the videos lately. I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for watching.